Everything that lives is designed to end. We are perpetually trapped in a never-ending spiral of life and death.
So one of the first things
Is
off
this
the
a
bat
curse? Or some
that's
kind
worth
of
mentioning
punishment?
as we transition
I
into the
often
start
think
of the
about the
game
God who
here,
blessed us with this cryptic puzzle.
we are going to be going into
And wonder
different
if we'll ever have
sort
the
of
chance to kill him.
sections of gameplay between being on foot and being in this sort of fighter jet thing.
Squadron, come in. 2B here. All units have penetrated the stratosphere. Autopilot systems green across the board.
I think we may have gotten. Came back for a second. We'll hope that's let's hope it's actually working.
A little bit of a late start there from Winsuper, but I think that might just be stream delay. I hope that's just stream delay, otherwise that's a very late start for Winsuper. It'll just be a little bit until both of these guys synchronize.
Manual mode and rely on visuals to evade.
Already engaged. Free movement unlocked.
Unfortunately, with our current setup here, using the internet to coordinate is very difficult in many cases, but unfortunately is the best that we can do for now.
Yeah.
So flying down into this sort of shoot 'em up section here, just making sure that we can take out the flying enemies around us in the coming waves as quickly as possible.
Yeah, the last enemy in each wave will basically end the timer for that wave, so the next one can start. So clearing the waves as quickly as possible can save a little bit of time. Really minor, but it does save time. And I mean, we're trying to go fast in the first place, so why not go fast on everything?
Alert. Enemy unit sighted ahead.
There we go, and it looks like both runners are synchronized here.
Requesting permission to engage. Permission granted.
Just in time for the first couple waves. A lot of this can be optimized very highly here. Winsuper's lost a little bit of time on delaying some of his attacks there, not instantly taking out the flying units.
I'm kind of
But
wondering.
very minor.
I'm kind of wondering if it's tied to his controller not working properly right now, but
It totally could be.
he's had some kind of weird just sitting in one spot for a little bit.
Permission to assume mobile configuration. Permission granted.
I would have thought that he had the phenomenon we were referring to earlier known as input glitch, but it might just be sort of a controller issue on his end, potentially. One thing worth mentioning here is the sort of camera perspective changes between these different sections. Even in the first couple minutes here, we had just seen sort of twin stick shooter style perspective, and then we're going to be transitioning again into more sort of shoot 'em up perspectives. And that's going to keep on changing basically throughout the game. In a little bit here, we'll be transitioning to the 3D combat on foot, which will definitely open up new doors and techniques to really sort of bring the game to life in the techniques that we use. But you can see different strategies here between the two runners and how they opt to clear out some of these waves. Very, very, very minor, but a couple seconds of time saved between the two different clearing decisions here from both of these runners. But again, the name of the game is to clear them out as quickly as possible. So here on MT's screen, he's transitioning into the 3D combat.
Yes, I'm
Because
aware
this
of
is an
that.
action RPG, we're going to be swinging some swords. And primarily the short sword, as a result of the game conveniently giving us the weapon set that will enable us to deal a ridiculous amount of damage right out of the gate. For some reason, when having a short sword on the heavy slot, and if you perform a dash attack into a heavy attack, just a couple frames afterwards, you will be able to multiply your damage by about 4.5 times.
Negative. This enemy is
And it looks like Winsuper was having a little bit of issues there, skipping the cutscene. I believe he has input glitch.
I didn't notice. I saw he was stuck on the cutscene. I didn't notice if it was input glitch or not.
Maybe. I had seen the keyboard input characters for skipping the cutscene, but I don't know if they were flickering or not. The flickering of the different input methods is a sure sign of input glitch, which unfortunately, as we had mentioned earlier, plagues a good number of runners. In some instances of loading into the game, it actually does cause that, but in some instances it just works perfectly fine.
And MT is doing the first kind of mini sequence break we have. Just kind of
Ma'am?
What is it?
gets you
I was going to
around a
send you the map
large
data I collected
portion of
earlier.
movement here. There's a long winding path to go around and get to this first silo that he's in now. But instead of knocking the
Nothing's ever
bridge down,
easy.
we can actually just climb up it using the different movement techniques that we have.
And we're going to be seeing more of that later on as well. MT making good clearing of those flying units there. They can sort of get out of hand if he's not careful. Both runners clearing that Silo 2 very quickly there. MT getting sort of shocked up on that last one there, but he's going to be trying to climb this bridge as fast as possible. First try bridge for MT. We'll see if Winsuper has any better luck at that as well. It looks like he's going to miss it for the first attempt there.
It looked like it ate his dash.
Potentially. You'll see on MT's screen here, he's going to navigate this sort of lava area out of bounds, away from the intended path.
Alert. Bulletproof apparatus
Conveniently, some of those walls are solid out
I
there,
know.
but it looks like Winsuper's having a little bit more difficulty than he is showing there. He did get bridge, and very quickly there, and he's going to be aiming to go out of bounds, but something is not working for Winsuper on his end. MT making short work of Silo 3 here.
Yep. A lot of strategically placed lasers using the pod program.
I surveyed the entire
Kind of
factory,
knock out
but
a
couldn't
good
find
three,
anything resembling our
4, or
target.
even sometimes
Maybe
5
they,
of those enemies
I don't
at the
know,
same time.
moved it somewhere?
It saves a good chunk of time.
That's a very nice laser
There
from
should be another facility across
Winsuper.
that
Getting
bridge.
4 in a
It's a bit of
row
a hike,
on
but should we check it out?
those lasers is definitely very
It's
nice,
not like command
and
to get a
optimizing
location
them so that
wrong.
way they
guess
clear
even
out
they
as
get
many
bad
enemies as
intel from time to
possible
time, huh?
is definitely something we're going to be looking for out of
I
those.
wouldn't bet on that.
MT has a good lead on Winsuper here, but Winsuper is definitely catching up.
Doesn't matter. I'll just take him out.
Especially in prologue here, what we had previously been passing over was definitely a lot of dense combat and tricks, very difficult to overall execute. And even going into these extra fights as well against two buzzsaw bosses here. MT being very careful to not slow down the boss. But it looked like he did not buff, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he did not buff. It is possible to do these without buffs. It's faster because it saves the menu time. But it is a little tougher. You do need to hit them with a couple damage glitches on their way across the bridge in order to reach the HP threshold. It can be a little bit tricky.
Winsuper also pulling off Marks II with no buffs. Very clean as well. He was a little short on the damage threshold there. His mind might be thinking of something else as he's doing prologue here, but moving on to angles here. Hopefully neither runner gets punches, but I'm kind of crossing my fingers here.
Yeah, we're in that part of the tournament where punches could cause a loss.
Could be the deciding factor for sure.
Yeah, so there, after this cutscene that's coming up on MT's screen here, Angles will pick one attack at random. If he picks any of his 2 punch attacks that are multiple hits, oh no!
I'm going to destroy.
This is a straight 23-second time loss. Can't do anything about it. You're just stuck with it. Any ranged attack that he does is the most optimal, as they're going to be the fastest attacks. And if he takes both of his arms back and kind of collapse them in the middle, then you lose about 3 seconds. So, ideally, you're just looking for a ranged attack of any kind.
But that's definitely going to put MT behind a little bit there. And Winsuper definitely making up all the time difference between these two runners here. Getting a ranged attack was what he was looking for. Making sure Angles did not occupy as long of a time frame between his attacks is definitely what he was looking for.
Something that has to be going on Winsuper's end. He was just standing there.
MT going off onto left pipe. Good choice, my friend. Left pipe is the clear best pipe.
I don't know about that.
You might disagree, but it perhaps is the truth here. You are 3 against 1 in this call and in this tournament here. Both Winsuper and MT going for left pipe, and me being a strong advocate for left pipe. How does that make you feel as a right piper?
Like I chose the right one.
Tisk tisk. But anyway, both runners here making clean work of some of these skips here. We saw MT and now Winsuper going on a double lift there to climb up the staircase of the Angles machine as fast as possible. We will be seeing more instances of that later on. Although it looks like ninjas gave MT a little bit of an interesting experience. That was a good laser by Winsuper. Holy crap.
I see he's started to adopt that. I had actually just recently switched back to doing it that way. It's a little scary doing it. Just lasering immediately, as we dub those enemies ninjas for a reason. They tend to just dodge immediately when you try and attack them there. By lasering immediately, they can all dodge, and then you lose a lot of time.
But I'm really quite surprised that in the time frame that Winsuper went to get into position and laser, that they didn't actually react in time. So getting that laser was definitely something.
Yeah.
very beneficial for Winsuper there. Although between different runners have different strategies, especially with mobbing those individual enemies. It's definitely something that they have the choice in. MT's still in a pretty cemented lead here, even with punches. Although, despite Winsuper's best efforts, with some of his tech issues that he's been having, still not too far behind. I'd say about 15 to 20 seconds behind.
Yeah. And both these runners are very picky with their prologue sections, so it's really cool to see them so close together. It's not going to be a huge time difference here.
And even the circumstances as well. I don't think I've ever, at least in recent times, seen Winsuper go out of prologue with a 15+ minute prologue. He's always aimed for a much lower prologue time overall, so he might be getting in his own head here with wanting a better overall prologue time, but that shouldn't necessarily be the reason why most runners reset. There can definitely be some good time save later on as well.
Here, MT is doing it, the menu boss.
All right.
These menus can be very tricky. The game actually forces you to do your settings in the bunker here.
Morning.
And the menu delays this game has can make those menus really be weird. If you mash too quick, then it eats about half your inputs. If you mash too slow, you're going too slow. It's really hard to get optimized.
Huh?
It's amusing too, because it's sort of like a roller coaster of inputs that you have to be doing in order to swiftly make your way through each of the menus there. MT displaying a good use of partner dialogue canceling, stopping just before the transporter's there, and talking with 9S allows him to walk into the dialogue trigger that exists there and basically cancel it out. So he's able to just walk right on through. And we'll see Winsuper do the same technique as well, saving a little bit of time ever so slightly faster than triggering the dialogue itself. But we'll see MT transfer back into the flight unit here. As we had mentioned before, clearing out enemies as quickly as possible during these sections is the name of the game. And it'll be interesting to see where exactly these runners choose to position themselves for each of these sections here. Some of the overall strategies do stay the same, but some runners do take things into their own hands.
Oh boy, here we go. That was very clean. Yeah, by kind of flicking the right analog stick up and down on that one wave, you can sometimes just instantly clear that entire wave. It's really tough to get perfectly, but that was very clean by MT. And Winsuper,
it looks like Winsuper's going for it too.
Also very clean.
There's a specific noise to that particular move there, but I don't know if that's safe to say on stream.
I'm too tired for that.
We'll save it for another day.
One thing worth mentioning there, after the prologue, the game will take away all of your remaining recoveries, so that flight section, ideally you don't take any damage in it, as we will not be able to heal up until we get to the resistance camp at the earliest.
But sometimes it is nice to live on the edge of low HP.
According to our
I
intel,
don't
none
know.
of the
I
machines in
don't.
this
I
area
don't
are
like the
hostile.
beeping.
We've been seeing more
Not
and more
necessarily
things like this
either.
lately.
I have
Just
actually
stand there and
experienced
stare
lower
into
frame rates
space.
as a result of being on
It's
low
pretty
HP, but unfortunate that's the case. But ahead of both of these runners here is a nice section of fetch
So this is the
questing.
resistance camp, huh? We should probably go talk to their leader first.
Fortunately, or unfortunately, the required quests in this section are both fetch quests. We just need to go out into sort of the city ruins area and collect some items. Fortunately, we know where those drops come from, so it's not too big of a deal, but it is a matter of optimization between all of these kills and pickups.
This must have been quite a city once upon a time. Too bad vegetation's claimed most of it now.
But one thing that is worth mentioning, in terms of our movement here, both runners are going to be
This is
doing
2B. Nothing to
dashes
report.
into punches very quickly, so that way they can boost
It's
their
fine.
movement speed just a
Does that question
little
have
bit
anything to do with our
between each
operation?
of the different
Not really.
dash punches.
Figured it might be
Earlier in the
nice to have some
prologue,
good
we had
weather.
seen
Being
dash
nice has no
chaining,
bearing.
That
so
should be
just
enough.
dash, dash,
Let's
dash.
get these back to the trader.
And later on, we will be
Most of the
seeing
central
another
area.
change
Big
to
plans,
that
too.
movement option as well, as we get the upgrade for our sword in just a little bit here.
Wonder if there are any huge boars and such, too.
Yeah.
Very
Overall,
slightly there.
overall, the movement changes aren't huge, but over the course of the entire run, whereas it's around an hour and a half to an
That's
hour and
everything
40
the supply
minutes,
trader asked for.
it saves a noticeable amount of time.
Man, these chores are a
So
real
doing the
pain in
movement
butt, huh?
optimally actually
The
is
Resistance is a valuable
something worth
ally to
focusing
your help.
on.
By helping them, we also help ourselves. So no, I don't think they're a pain.
Yeah.
One thing that I wanted to point out there as MT was killing some of those quest machines there, he was doing the inputs for a future technique that we'll be doing once we reach the desert to throw one damage glitch, swap our weapon sets, and throw another damage glitch. But that requires having the sword on both weapon sets. Sometimes runners will still perform those inputs by mistake. I know myself, I get really in the moment when that happens.
Yep, I've done that. Yep. Yep. And any time I do that and then I realize that it's wrong, I can't seem to swap back to the correct set.
Location specified by resistance leader.
Understood, 042.
But we're looking at
Roger,
MT
on target.
here
The
do
desert heat is going to
the
make resupplying
different
efforts difficult.
movement technique here
Please make
now
sure
that we
you're ready
have
before you go.
the Virtuous Contract sword at level 2. It is a little bit faster than dash punching. However, if he does mess up a couple of these inputs, he does lose the amount of time that he would have gained from the previous like 4 or 5 dash swings.
Yeah. It's a double-edged deal. I mean, you know, it saves time, but you mess it up and you can lose a lot.
But there isn't too much time difference between both runners here.
Yeah.
One little slip up from MT can definitely cost him a good amount of time and put Winsuper in a better position to pull the rug out from MT's feet here. At the desert camp, he's going to be looking to buy some recoveries and some damage buffs. He's also going to buy an animal bait and a chip known as Resilience. That's going to be useful later, but we'll make it so that way he doesn't stagger so long as his HP is full.
Map data, huh? It's hard
Or
to get an accurate
above
picture from this.
80%. But yeah,
Our satellite
we
resolution
basically
isn't
just
so
will
high.
top off,
Hopefully they deploy some new
kind of
satellites
heal
soon.
up damage
A
every time
general
we get
idea
hit.
is good enough.
So
You
yeah,
don't
it's
let
full,
anything get
but
in your way, do you?
80%. Oh. I think Winsuper's having issues again.
That's going to be quite unfortunate. it looks like his game is not frozen, given how the menu
Who
is still
opens a
sort of
sealed gate
blipping
with explosives?
on the
There's
select
gotta be an
dialog
easier way,
box,
right?
but I'm not too certain what's going on Winsuper's end there.
I think it's just his controller keeps disconnecting. I think that's what it sounded like he was saying. But here we saw
This
MT
sand sure is slippery.
clip out of bounds by that barrier and then stay out of bounds. In doing that, we kind of pick up the triggers we needed, and then we can progress into the desert, and we skip a full-on cutscene, and then like kind of like a half cutscene, where we need to talk to the NPC and have her explode the barricade for us. So we kind of skip 2 cutscenes
Careful.
by
We've got
clipping out
enemies
here.
approaching.
And it's surprisingly easy to do, given that 2B and her attacks are very sort of fast and powerful. They really allow us the ability to clip out in almost, I wouldn't really say every wall, but in a good number of the walls that we have to get through, we technically can. Given a precise angle and given enough time, you will find that angle, and eventually that clip will exist.
Very nice Don Burrows for MT there.
Individual target ID.
That robot sometimes can choose to just walk around for a little while instead of immediately diving underground. MT was able to get an instant dive.
What's that?
Analysis.
What he also did that we didn't touch on, and Winsuper did as well, we picked up a second pod there, which is our little companion that's floating beside us. They have different attacks as far as just their normal pod fire. We typically won't use this pod we just picked up for the pod fire, but pods will have separate cooldowns on their pod programs, which will be used in a couple spots in this run.
And we're seeing MT here traverse the desert housing area as quickly as he possibly can, clipping out of bounds, and is going to be looking to pick up one of the triggers in this apartment building. His mini-map has turned red over the atom pit, so he knows that he has the trigger. That was a very lucky save to get onto the platform, but still, overall, good execution. That's gonna save a good chunk of time, I think like 30 seconds or so.
Somewhere
Overall,
around that,
pretty damn fast. And he also opted to swap out his first weapon set to have the short sword on the heavy slot, just like his secondary weapon set. That's going to make it so that way he can throw one damage glitch, swap his weapon set, and throw another damage glitch with the first one still spinning, which is definitely useful for a good number of these fights in taking out enemies as quickly as he possibly can. We'll see Winsuper here also attempt for desert housing skip. He should be able to get the trigger out there as well, and he's going to maneuver in just the right way to pod spin down onto the platform. I'd say about 30 to 40 seconds between these two runners here, but definitely going into Atom 1 here can definitely turn the tide of the battle if Winsuper gets a good Atom 1 kill here. MT also opting to go for the self-destruct, killing a little bit more enemies. He definitely needs to be careful on one of these phases here, so that way he outputs just the right amount of damage to skip one of the phases Adam has, and it looks like he's cemented himself into a good position there, transitioning into the next phase without having to see an intermediate cutscene.
Ooh. Oh no.
Oof, it looks like MT missed one of his lasers there. Didn't get enough damage on Adam to bring him down off of the cement sort of high up location that Adam's normally positioned at.
This fight is arguably the least favorite fight of any runner.
It's super annoying.
It's bad. The counterattacks are awful.
We'll see if Winsuper has any better luck on Adam there. One of those damage glitches was a little off. Ooh.
Yep. A little bit off.
That's gonna cost him a good amount of time seeing that cutscene.
Yeah. That is the cutscene that MT was able to skip.
Unfortunate, but there's still a good amount of time saved for Winsuper to catch up on if he's lucky. I'm surprised that hit.
Looks like
Yeah,
we're
I didn't
safe.
know they could hit through that.
What the hell just happened?
I know.
Good to know.
I've never seen a machine like that before.
I guess the
We
hitbox
better
for
report
the
this to
laser
command.
itself is a little bit larger
Let's move to
than
an area with
that
better reception so we can contact
pillar
command.
that Adam is standing on. That was a clean finish
Yeah.
there. Very nice from Winsuper, closing out the Adam 1 fight. Hot on MT's heels, going into swag box clip here.
So here we're gonna, MT's gonna make use of the transport we got at the beginning of the desert. By clipping out of bounds here, we skip a dialogue or a call from Operator 60. And in doing so, that allows us to get in range of the transporter, quick save, and then load, which will place us at that transporter. Saves us a lot of movement. Plus, since we use the loadless timing, it takes all that extra time out as well.
Essentially displacing us to the desert
So,
camp for free,
Maybe we should.
No.
Roger.
Yeah.
essentially. And it looks like Winsuper's having a little bit of difficulty on the
Operator
box
to 9S.
clip itself.
Data upload complete.
Roger.
That was
I
weird.
also have an incoming
He
message
must
from
have
the
pushed it a
commander.
little bit too
Initiating
far
playback.
forward. If he
Yeah.
was clipping
2B, 9S.
If he was
We've
clipping
lost
through the
contact with
box,
several
but
Yorba
not
units
clipping
that
into
were
the
on their way
rock
to
that
the
was
surface.
next to it,
Their black boxes
a
are
little
online,
unfortunate.
So we presume they're still alive. We've tracked the location of their signals, so I need all Yorba units on the
For a
surface
second
to
there, I
head
thought he
over
was
and
going to go back to the
investigate.
title screen. It looks like some of his
Transmission.
settings were just a little bit
I
off,
heard something
so
about that back at the resistance camp.
just making
Target
a
location
couple
confirmed.
adjustments there.
Don't
MT is
worry
going to be
about the
making
other
his way
androids.
out
We
to
should
the
probably
amusement
check this
park.
out as soon as possible. Looks like our surface route's been cut off. Maybe we can.
I think
F1
both
dis-
runners are going to be playing it
So
safe
2B,
here.
those
I don't
machines out in the
like...
desert
Probably.
look just like
Yeah.
androids, right?
Most
Right,
runners will
but
play
we
it safe.
androids
There
were
is a
modeled
skip
after our human
in the
creators.
amusement park.
So why would
It's
machines
relatively
try to
new.
look like us?
Most
no
of the
point
runners are
trying to
going to
work
opt
out
to not
unsolvable
go for that
problems.
skip.
I suppose.
It's either save 5 seconds or lose 25 seconds. So a lot of people don't want to do that. Oof.
MT losing a little bit of time there, hitting that discovery
are
cutscene
those?
at the beginning of the amusement park.
What the?
Wow, this is weird.
But MT is also going to be setting up to do a skip known as Let's Play Skip. So he's going to be clipping out of bounds at a particular building, so that way he can traverse the amusement park area without actually having to go through some of the alleyways. This also would skip 2 cutscenes that we would otherwise have to sit through.
Yeah.
Still a very powerful skip at that, and very fun to learn.
Do you really think
Some of the
idea
out of
to
bounds
leave
is a
that
little
tank behind?
wonky,
If they aren't hostile,
given the
fighting
invisible
them is a
floors
waste of
and
time.
everything, and
Yeah,
Drown
invisible
zones around.
floors, drown zones, textures that don't exist.
What's this?
Analysis.
It's kind of
It's a whole
crazy.
mess.
Is a device that propels humans on rails at high speeds for the purposes of amusement. It was constantly referred to
Winsuper
as a
going for the just the regular
Sure are
lift to
strange
get over the
creatures.
cutscene.
That was an interesting decision from Winsuper at that as well. Just doing a single lift would actually be faster than doing a double lift
Yes?
over
People who know me well
a
usually call me
particular
Knox,
cutscene,
so
which for a second there I thought he wasn't actually going to make it.
Yeah, it was very
you want to
close.
call me Nines. It's totally okay.
My problem with going that far up on the route is
Oh,
getting the drown zone here.
Looks
But-
like he lost a little bit of altitude between those dash swings, but he respawned on the... That's interesting.
This game does not make much sense. It's supposed to respawn you on the last grounded location, which he clearly did not hit a grounded location there, but okay.
I don't quite see what Winsuper's frame rate is. Is that 50 something?
It looks like he's getting 58 to 60. I think it's more based on his controller. I know
think
he said he was having issues with.
It possibly could be. Unfortunately, that is one of the many things
What
that
the
we have
hell?
to deal with
Well,
on
records don't say anything
PC,
about-
in that the controls
Like this.
sometimes do not want to cooperate. But MT here in the Beauvoir fight, making short work of her first phase. He dealt just enough damage so that way he had the boss start her first attack, but then immediately finished that attack or thresholded her, and so she
It's trying to
immediately
hack us.
returned back
If
up
we
to the
take hacking
stage.
damage, it'll affect our bodies as well.
Effectively finishing the phase as quickly as he possibly can.
Are we seriously being attacked with dead androids?
Winsuper unfortunately
I don't
losing
think-
ground
2B.
here
I'm detecting black box
as
signals.
MT
They're dead.
storms ahead,
They've been turned into weapons.
Alright, this ends now.
but still relatively close. If MT messes up later on in his run, then he might. Winsuper still has a chance.
I've almost analyzed the enemy's hacking pattern. I'm going to try to
There's
hack it back.
there's a lot
Keep
of
it busy.
spot for error in this run.
Oh,
Some of
for
them
a split
some of them
second.
can be very, very bad too.
It looked as if Beauvoir was about to get away from Winsuper there, but he pulled her back just in time to threshold her and get her back up onto the stage. And one thing that you'll notice MT doing is self-destructing at the very end of the Beauvoir fight. That will enable him to
Oh,
basically set up for a later skip
I think
known as a death warp.
so.
What is it?
That machine had some pretty weird.
It'll
things
save
to
a good
say,
amount of
huh?
travel time
It's almost
later
like it had
on
actual emotion.
The
in
machines don't
just a
have
couple minutes
feelings.
here.
You said that yourself.
Yeah,
But I did notice that MT
Yes.
got hacked unintentionally one time there,
Yes.
and I believe Winsuper is having a little bit better luck there on some of those attacks.
Yep. Yeah, it didn't look like Winsuper got hacked at all, other than the one that's forced. And then MT had one unintentional. So those hacks can lose 6 seconds or so, 5-6 seconds, somewhere in that time range. Kind of depends how long it takes you to do the hack.
But this is definitely going to be an uphill battle for Winsuper.
So why don't the machines, or the aliens who created them, attack the bunker directly? They originally came here from outer space, right?
Well, there are a few theories about that, but no one knows for sure. Hard to
So
tell
now
what
that
an
MT
alien is thinking,
is arriving in Pascal's village here, one thing that he's got to make sure that he does is activate the
They all have white
transporter
flags.
in the
Looks like
village
they really don't want to
and
fight.
save. That's important because he's going to be death warping back to the Pascal's village, so that way, when he picks up the quest item from the resistance camp, he can instantly transport back to Pascal's village and complete the quest. Which is a very sort of handy technique that runners use to just save the travel time between the two different locations.
Operator 60 to 2B. Time for your
And it looks like, wow, those are some pretty sparse animals for MT. Nothing spawning immediately in front of him.
What's wrong?
Oh,
He did get a boar, though.
He still did get a boar.
I kind of liked, but when I asked her out,
Yeah, the boar hopping, only on the boar, but boar hopping is actually slightly faster, or
Ever so slightly.
like very
I
slightly.
am definitely not the
Just
person
because
to
of
discuss this with.
hopping up a hill on the boar
stand spending one more
is
day
kind of
longer.
crazy. You'll see it coming
You
up right
leaving would
here.
be bad for me. It would affect mission efficiency.
Gains a
Boing,
good
boing,
bit of
boing, boing.
Yeah, it gains a good amount of speed with those skills.
All model be
For whatever reason, it doesn't seem to work like that on the moose.
The moose he jumps too high. I think that's
Either
the
that
problem
or
with the moose.
Yeah, either that or the moose is a lot lighter than the boar.
What do you think?
That's
You
true.
just started transmitting to...
Now do you believe we're not a threat?
Your mouth can say
Winsuper having a little bit of difficulty on the box. They're actually opting to go around. I'm quite surprised at that. He possibly could have just taken the time to push the box and perform a
just pod launch.
Yeah.
What?
Wow.
The boar, huh.
That was a very
Okay,
mean
then.
boar.
The animals can be really bad. Sometimes if you actually place an animal bait
fair.
so that it's equally between a certain amount of animals,
What's
then
that
none of them
noise?
will even get the bait. So it's
This is an emergency
the animals
transmission
are
from the
very
bunker.
bad.
We're reading a Goliath-class
Sort of
enemy inside
humming
the
and
ruins.
hawing
It
over
looks like there
who's
are
gonna
a ton
get
of
it
other
is
machines that
always
will- All your high
a
units should
struggle.
proceed and engage immediately.
A Goliath? This was a trap. I knew it.
But as we had seen MT do,
I promise you, we were not.
once he got the
2B.
quest item
Command is
from
deploying
the
new flight
resistance
units
camp,
for us. They
made
just set the
his way
coordinates,
back
so
out
let's get
to
going.
Pascal's village from the Death Warp, and now made his way out to the City Angles encounter. But there is something special about this encounter that most people don't really encounter in
Probably
their
shouldn't get
casual
near that guy's
playthrough
feet.
of this,
Yeah,
in
no,
that
but let's
only
find
the
another
second
way.
Angles machine that you face is required.
Yeah. So technically speaking, if you
The
were to
flight
pod
units should be on
fire
the
the
roof of that
second
building up
ankles
ahead.
down from the
It'd be
ground,
dangerous, but we're not
you would
going
be able
anywhere
to
unless we
progress,
pass
I
through that
believe.
Goliath's legs.
Yeah.
We should be careful.
It would
Funny
take
enough.
a while, but yeah.
Yeah, funny enough, that's what New Game Plus does as a strategy, and just firing down the first or the second angles that you would encounter, and just get into the flight units, and then you immediately finish the encounter.
Yeah.
But one thing that
Yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
go. Oh, alright then. One thing that MT is going to be trying to do here is thread 2B through a tiny little hole, nice, through the building and the invisible wall that's present there.
These guys are packed with anti-air
For some
weapons.
reason, that
Make sure to
hole
approach
was
at
just
low
never
altitude.
discovered by the
Copy that.
developers, so either left in intentionally or not intentionally, we'll never know. But as runners, we could either hop through that tiny little hole, or we could actually just hop right over the invisible wall. Yep, very conveniently left for us from the developers. Almost convenient, if you will.
Pretty reoccurring theme throughout this run. Just walls not being tall enough or walls not being thick enough. Just something is wrong with all the walls in this game. And then that was a use of the double pod program in the flight suit by MT to instantly take down the second city angles. And then here, so MT's going to get a call, and you heard that little phone ring noise.
For the first time in centuries,
We're actually going to
intercepted
interrupt
a
that
signal
call
belonging
here
to the aliens. These are
with
the
some
creatures that are
dialogue,
in direct command
just
of
from
the
moving
machine
quickly
life forms on
to
this
the
planet.
next area.
If we can destroy them, we can
In
end
doing
this long and
so,
arduous war
it
once
cancels
and
it
for all.
while you're in
It
a
seems to
phone
be
call.
underground. Like
And
way
the
underground.
game basically
Guess we'll
leaves
see
you
once we
in
get there.
the state of being in a
If we're
phone
lucky.
call for the
You're
rest
not
of the
much
run.
for plans, are you, 2B?
What that does is anytime anyone in the game would be calling you, we no longer have the ring sound, as it'll already read that you're
Look at
in
all
a
these
call
dead machines.
and not play the ring.
Seems like they've been here for a long time.
Saves a couple seconds
What
per
is this
phone call.
place?
I don't know.
It does add
There's
up
nothing
over
like
the
it in
course of a
database.
run. So it's kind of silly that it's just there, and a lot of us probably even got it in our casual playthrough.
Yeah.
To be honest, unless you're doing all the
Look out.
side quests,
My
you
name
probably got
is
it in
Adam.
casually.
The aliens you
Well, it's a
seek
really
are no
interesting
longer
phenomenon
here.
that
They
most
were
people
wiped
don't
out
really
centuries ago by us.
sort of look at,
The
in that
machines.
tiny little
And who knows?
effect of
Perhaps
just
we'll
going
wipe
from
out
point
the
A to point
androids
B
next.
can really affect
Machines are
the
weapons
duration,
capable
even in
of
longer
evolution.
categories at that
We can
too.
grow. We can become
Because that small second
Eventually,
or so that it
intelligence
takes for the
within our
phone
network
to
began
ring
surpass
and then
that of
for
our
the
creators.
dialogue to actually
You'd
begin
probably be
can
surprised
definitely
how
add up
quickly it happened.
with
You destroyed
the
your own
longer
creators.
categories,
There's no
and
need
we'll
to
definitely
fret
feel
about
the
that.
effects of it
They were
in
simple,
A ending.
infantile.
But because we aren't going to be going into the later endings, we definitely will not be
They
taking
held no value to us,
taking
but the
advantage of
humans
that
on the
trick
moon,
to its
now they
100%.
interest me.
Why them?
Because they are an enigma. They killed uncountable numbers of their own kind.
But now that
And
MT
yet
has
lots
finished
of
off
people measure. It's
Steve
fascinating, don't
in
you think?
the negotiation
What
section
could possibly
here,
drive such behavior?
we don't want to be in this
We
arena
have
anymore,
dedicated
so
ourselves
he's
to
just going to
unraveling
do
this
a
riddle
counter
of humanity.
attack into a
And now
high
we
jump.
will allow you to assist us.
That was a
You
wonky
were made
angle,
in their
but
image,
that still
after all.
somehow
To
worked.
do what?
It's simple.
And
We need you to locate
just
the
very
humans on the moon
conveniently
and bring them to us. We
make
will
our way
then
over these
dissect
invisible
and
walls
analyze them
into
in order
the
to
tunnel
drag their
here that we had
secrets forth
traversed
into the
initially.
light. Surely you
Is going to
see
be
the
able
attraction
to
of
kill
this.
some of these
Are you
enemies
insane?
in the tunnel,
We'd never do that. Can
and
you
he might
believe
even
this,
pick up
2B?
some materials
This
that he'll
guy's
need
bonkers.
later.
I suppose this
No
concludes
materials.
negotiations.
No
The
materials, but
only
he will be
option
taking advantage of
is to
that
destroy
XP
the
from
same
these
way we
enemies. Still
destroyed
very
these
handy
pathetic little aliens.
overall.
Couldn't quite clear it, but getting a little
Yeah.
extra EXP is always nice. And it also allows you, killing those enemies also allows you to dash swing
Back this way
through
again?
whatever portions of the
pain.
cave you were able to
Stop
clear.
complaining.
Yeah.
Very minor time save,
This is
but
Operator 6
any
Zone.
time save
We
you
now
can
have
get.
an operational transporter in the city ruins. We're attempting to deploy them at other points as well.
So those materials that
About
MT
time we
did
had
not
access
pick
to
up is
those.
actually
Care to fill
for
me in?
another
Transporters?
sword
They
upgrade.
let you transfer your
2 of the
consciousness to
4
a temporary body back in the
upgrade
bunker.
or
You're
materials
done.
are actually just
So
RNG, so a lot of runners it's kind of risky, and a lot of runners don't even like checking, especially in this tournament setting. It can really make your runs be bad. Let's just say that.
But it'll be interesting to see if Winsuper also decides to go for that sword upgrade. I know it's somewhat minor overall in
That
the
of course, this
first major ending that we'll be seeing today, but that damage increase is definitely something that could be looked into for
Probably rest a little bit,
higher
2B.
levels of
It's been a
speed.
while.
I'll rest if I feel like
However, it is highly dependent on RNG, which is rather unfortunate.
And it also messes with the out of bounds segments later in the run, as the contract line of weapons will gain an attack speed increase each time you level them. So with the attack speed comes different clipping power, um, different angles that are required, and it's tough.
We, of course. Pass us. Where?
And MT is coming up to the last buying section of the run. We're going to sell off the machine cores from the previous boss fights, some of our HUD chips, and our small buffs, and we're going to exchange those out for large buffs, and then max out our recoveries for the rest of the run.
MT opting to not buy defensive buffs. It's a risky move, but still a fast move.
A lot of runners have opted
Say,
to get defense buffs for this tournament.
When do you think
It's just
you'll
a
be
bit
willing to call
safer,
me Nines?
9S works just fine.
as we don't
Whoa,
save very
yeah.
often.
Man, this job can be pretty rough sometimes.
I didn't get a glimpse
We don't
on
get to
what
choose our
chips
assignments,
MT
and you should
had
work on keeping
in
your
his
opinions in
inventory,
check.
but it looks like
You're
he'll be
Han
taking the
allowed to
time
be
to
emotional,
equip them
remember?
I
after
think
this
some of us
small
are better at
encounter
that
with
than others.
the machines here.
This must be the commercial
in the
structure
commercial
Pascal was
facility.
talking about. The records say it
We'll
was once a
see
facility known as
from
a
both
shopping
runners,
center.
actually, how they fared in the earlier sections of the run in terms of RNG. Obviously, getting the most amount of critical chips as possible is what we're looking for. Criticals are the name of the game in terms of pure damage output, at least for this category.
Well, what do you expect? I'm a scanner.
Yeah,
Combat was
for
never.
sure.
Check this guy.
Yeah,
He's just
crits
running
are
away.
a very large increase. They're 500% damage.
So MT choosing to do it after there's
Ooh.
still no offensive chips. That's going to be huge. Actually opting to put in movement speed chips, I don't believe that affects dash speed. I think that
Looks like
affects
the
only
forest is
sprint
just ahead.
speed.
Yep. The moving speed is your sprinting or walking, whatever, that movement. Your evade range is what will increase your dash duration, which is actually what you want to be equipping if you have those, and no attack chips. I did see Winsuper has at least one critical 0.
Here they come. Better keep your guard
Just
up.
from his menu.
I'm
His
aware
menu
of how to
placement
fight.
didn't really show
You
off
just
a
be
lot of it.
careful.
I will, 2B.
He does at least have a critical chip.
But that can definitely turn the tide if that critical happens in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. So the game, if you don't have any critical chips equipped, then you have 0% chance to crit, so you
What
will
is
never
with
see
these
them.
guys?
Don't listen to what they're
You
saying,
have to have a
2B.
chip equipped in order to see them.
How are we supposed to reach that castle?
One thing that MT is going to be trying to do here to cross the chasm between the castle and the mainland here, he's either going to opt for a long jump or he's going to opt to slide along the hillside. And it looks like he's going to try to do the long jump strategy here, known as Rainbow Road.
Longest jump that we have in A ending. Nicely done. Definitely different inputs than I use personally, but if it works for you, then hey.
There are a couple of different strategies into that as well, between the different inputs that you can do and which ones you can actually omit.
Yep. Actually did not even see. I wasn't paying attention to Winsuper. I didn't see what he equipped.
I unfortunately wasn't paying attention either. But if he does take advantage of that critical chip that he has in his inventory, then he's definitely going to get a better advantage in terms of some of his combat. But it's going to be when exactly that critical chip goes into effect will be the deciding factor for most of it. Unfortunately, crits are still RNG, We cannot will a crit into being, but we can at least give it a
android.
chance.
A Yorha-type android.
Alert. This unit is currently wanted by Yorha. Annihilation recommended.
One of the tricks that we saw MT
But
there
why?
was actually
Let's
skip
go,
the
Minus.
entire
To be.
castle section and just a couple high jumps and made his way into the A2 fight very swiftly. Winsuper also choosing to do Rainbow Road as well. Even with the pod launch SD pod spin strategy, not many people are able to pull that off, but it is a good technique in gaining a little bit more distance and not losing too much height at that, because it is a careful balance between those two attributes of a long jump, in that you don't want to be losing too much altitude as we perform the long jump. But very swift A2 from MT. Unfortunately, given the nature of this, good combat can definitely make up for the lack of offensive chips. And MT is definitely taking advantage of his practice into combat there to swiftly take out A2, who is definitely an interesting boss, and a relatively difficult boss fight at that.
Yeah. Yeah, with the resilience chip, it's significantly easier, but it still can be kind of weird. The hitbox is weird, and her attack patterns can be annoying, as she does have the ability to dash completely off screen and be untargetable. It's kind of a weird fight.
So it looks like Winsuper got a good amount of crit chips, potentially a crit +1 or so. I did see about 4 critical hits there.
It's not recommended to interface with
during the
machines
A2
without
fight.
consulting command.
Some very well placed damage glitches at that,
Still, machines are
saving a
enemy.
good amount of
Don't
time
forget.
as
Oh, it should.
Winsuper escapes the arena and transports back to Pascal's village. One thing here that MT is doing, he's clipped out of the back area of the resistance camp and made his way out to the entrance of the flooded city. He's going to pick up the required trigger, that is the discovery cutscene, and he's going to void out, reaching the bottom of the map, respawn back up at the resistance camp, and then plunge down to the other end of the flooded city, progressing the quest in taking out these machines on the flooded city shore. Very useful trick there.
Oh no. Spinner.
MT was careful to make sure that spinner was taunted, but it looks like he missed out on some of those melee attacks that he needed at the same time. This is still very close between these two runners here. MT is definitely having to make sure that he is successful on the skips that exist after this very, very long shmup section.
Everyone's favorite.
Everybody's favorite section, Groon.
Everybody loves Groon.
The Winsuper is definitely hot on MT's heels this late into the run. I really still think this can go either way.
It can. The timer difference is actually kind of interesting, though. The reason being for that, as Winsuper did not get the save scum in the desert, so his timer is actually a decent bit behind what it typically would be, as he did not get the save load in the desert area. There's not a lot of time save in the Groom segment. It's more kind of like the prologue, just clear waves as quickly as possible. There are some more important fights in this shmup sequence here, but for the most part, a lot of it is just quickly clear out any enemies that you can see. Don't let any escape, as then you have to wait for the game to despawn those enemies to start the next wave. Kind of most of the current runners probably have these waves memorized at this point. We've seen it enough times.
We need immediate backup from any available android forces.
So definitely, if you're wanting to get up and stretch, get something to eat, get something to drink, do that now. We'll be returning in a couple of minutes here after this section, as both runners are deep into the shoot 'em up section here. I do actually want to point out sort of theory crafting here of Winsuper's potential chance of getting the of taking the win here tonight. MT doesn't have any defensive buffs, and he does actually need to be careful of where he positions himself later on in some of the later fights in the game, because I do know without defensive buffs you do put yourself in a pretty precarious position if you're not careful with your HP. And MT definitely needs to be on top of his HP in those circumstances, because taking a death at this point would set him back pretty far. Not necessarily in this section in particular, but definitely later on towards the end of the run.
We don't have many save points in the run, so depending on position in the game, sometimes they can set you back a good 2 full splits. It's pretty rough with the with not saving.
Is that a machine?
But I still think Winsuper has a chance here. Of course, because we are in a double elimination phase of this tournament, one runner tonight will be moving on to continue in the winner's bracket, and one runner will continue on in the loser's bracket.
Command is attempting to launch a satellite laser strike on your target, but the enemy's electromagnetic camouflage is making it impossible to aim. We need you to find the emitter and take it out.
Oh, is that all?
I know.
So, for those of you who haven't necessarily been tuned in to most of this tournament here, we do have links to the tournament bracket itself. !NA in chat will bring you to the I believe it'll bring you to the challenge page, as well as our spreadsheet for both the scheduling of matches and the overall bracket, as well as Speed Gaming's link.
Enemy data obtained from
I think speedgaming.com/NA is the link.
Is a lone sighting 320 years ago.
Speedgaming.org, I should say. Sorry.
Unleashed
My
a
bad.
devastating electromagnetic wave attack. All
Yeah.
resistance fighters in the vicinity were annihilated.
Yeah, there's still a lot of races left, and there's a lot of close ones. We've been seeing a lot of personal bests in this tournament, so I'm actually interested to see how many more we can squeeze out before the end. Yeah, in the first 2 matches of the tournament, we have already seen 3 of the 4 runners PB, including the new Automata any % world record in the first match of round 2.
Nothing stopped the scourge that is Canaris.
Yeah.
His will to PB just...
Don't look at me. I can't do it. Don't look at me. I tried my hardest.
Electromagnetic interference eliminated.
But I'm excited for
satellite laser
some of
strike.
the later matches as well. This is the preliminary stages of Phase 2. But once these matches get close, and once these matches get very, very close between some of these runners, it's going to be exciting. I'm excited.
I'm the commanding officer, 4B. Don't worry, we'll take
we
it
have
from
a
here.
very large amount of runners in the 127 to 129 range for PB. So it'll be interesting in the later stages.
Except for me, don't even... I don't think I can support it anymore.
We've got mortars lining the shoreline.
It's too far, it's out of my
Shielding
reach.
in the world won't help against close-range mortar fire.
Got it.
I'll help aim.
But unfortunately, between some of these exterior, I guess mini-bosses you can call them, on Grun himself, they can sometimes give you bad RNG in that sometimes they'll rotate the wrong way, sometimes they'll rotate the right way, and it's mostly RNG as far as we understand it.
Yeah.
And from Winsuper there, he didn't lose too much time, but that might change between these different cores here. It's really anybody's game at this point, given how close these guys are to each other.
There are a lot of opportunities to softlock the game from here till the end as well, so never would wish that on a runner, but it is possible in a lot of sections coming up here to just softlock the game.
I am not saying anything, but that is definitely something we're going to have to look for in these upcoming sections here. We still have a good couple minutes here. Both of these guys about halfway through the shoot 'em up section.
No! He has a plan.
The old disco whale.
The disco space whale.
Indeed.
Space disco whale?
I don't know. I just call it the disco whale, so I don't know.
I can believe that.
Otherwise, this is going to go off course.
Maybe Grun just wants to dance. Like, he's flailing in his arms all over the place. Like, that's just how he gets down. That's just how he dances.
He's just trying to give us a high five, but we're denying him that.
Because we're too small.
Yep.
It was an interesting pod program from MT there, actually using it to get himself out of a stun lock. But the remaining cores for both of these runners shouldn't give either one of them too much issues.
The last two cores are a good bit easier than the first one. I don't honestly know why, other than just the camera angle is more friendly for dealing damage.
Yeah, I think it is that, in how, when it's sort of on a side scroller in the shoot 'em up thing in the flight unit, it changes how the pod program sort of spits out its missiles, but when it's sort of in a top-down twin-stick shooter, it sort of changes it so that way the damage occurs at different places, sort of in a spiral versus like a star but different hitboxes, different situations. We're not entirely certain, but we're certain that it's a little wonky.
Yeah. Ow.
Unfortunately, we're seeing Winsuper affected only once by bad RNG. They're, again, the core rotating the wrong way in, I guess, 1-2 bar rotations, but we'll see MT here make short work of the core, the final core. Thank God somebody's getting out of Gruen here. Moving on into the later end of, or the latter half of A ending.
Gruen is the gatekeeper of A ending. If you can make it through Gruen without falling asleep, you get to do all the cool stuff.
And cool stuff we will see.
Right off the bat, using some of the drown warps here to kind of quickly traverse our way around the edges of the flooded city.
Definitely sort of handy in terms of navigating the flooded city area, given how bumpy some of the terrain is. Definitely taking advantage of those drown areas is going to be something both runners are going to be looking for.
Yep.
But the true gatekeeper to the end section of this run is a clip known as Copied City Clip. If you are familiar, then you'll know that this clip is horrible. If you're unfamiliar, then this clip is horrible.
Indeed. I believe MT uses keyboard and mouse setup for this, which in my practice it has seemed a bit more consistent, but again, with the input glitch issue that we brought up earlier, you do put yourself at risk by doing that.
I'm not too certain what angle MT was using there. It looked a little off from what I would have used as keyboard and mouse, but...
Yeah, I'm not sure. I believe MT actually also uses keyboard and mouse for mansplaining, which is a little bit different than a lot of runners. A lot of runners will still use controller for this one.
Oof, that drown warp wasn't quite far enough out from what Winsuper was wanting there. He got it on the second try, but only after a little bit farther displacement. It actually put him backwards about a couple seconds, a handful of seconds. But MT storming ahead into the mansplaining skip. Surprisingly, a very precise high jump that needs just the right amount of force to clip out on one of those boxes and escape the arena. He's going to be aiming to go into the elevator here to cancel a specific part of Adam's dialogue with the elevator that, or with the dialogue that exists in the elevator. We'll see how Winsuper fares on Copied City Clip. It did take MT a couple attempts. It looks like Winsuper's also having a couple issues here. Trying to find the right angle.
I have severed my connection to the network. Now.
Oof, I don't know which rock he's using as a lineup there, but there we go. Very nice.
Oh boy. So here...
You need to be careful on those rocks.
Yeah. Here for MT, he just needs to trigger this dialogue for this phase. At this point, he can kind of just avoid Adam and just wait until after his dialogue. There, and then a pod fire will progress him to the next phase. And this will be just the final phase. Just deal damage as quickly as possible. This can happen though. where Adam just decides to go untargetable, and it's really unfortunate.
Sort of an RNG choice on which attacks Adam actually ends up doing there, but
It looks
not
like he got
too
one.
shabby.
It looks like he used one invulnerable attack, which is not too bad. That's a pretty good fight.
But all the while making Winsuper's fight here all the more uphill. He did get a good clip out on mansplaining as the fight began, but we'll see if he lost any additional time to that. One thing that MT was doing there, he finished speaking with an enemy and quickly talked with the computer girl that's standing right next to an enemy. He used her to basically cancel the dialogue that Commander would have spoken and spoke with instead Devila and Popola. That enabled him to pick up some skill salves that he'll be using later on in the run.
No kidding.
For some maximum damage output on one of the later bosses.
If that's what they want,
Yeah.
why don't they move in?
I believe they're working on building a colony of their own.
You don't say.
Indeed.
Winsuper having a little bit of trouble there on Adam trying to get the damage threshold for the dialogue
I was
to
actually
start.
planning to go speak with them myself, you know. Maybe we can meet up over there?
Sounds good.
That's when you're
Although-
hoping for crits.
Yeah, I don't think it crit a single time in that section there, but we'll see if Winsuper has any better luck on the final phase of Adam 2. It might just be that Winsuper has a crit plus 0 because those chips are those crits are pretty sparse.
Yeah.
Even you?
I think he just had really good luck on A2 and got like 5.
I think so too. Or maybe the inverse is true, who knows.
Yeah.
MT making good use of 2B's secret there.
Oh no. Winsuper actually missed the dialogue skip here. In doing so, we cannot read the mail as there's another dialogue playing. So at this point, he will be going back to the older route, which is to get the transporter on the way to factory and read the mail. You will still have to wait for Pascal to spawn, but it will cut the time loss a little bit, as opposed to waiting through the entire dialogue and reading in the resistance camp.
Although that's still going to put him behind, I'd say, about 15 to 20 seconds or so of waiting,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate. NT making good use of Pascal's dialogue box there to cancel Pascal's actual dialogue, causing the deep factory area to load in ever so slightly faster.
Who would have known you could cancel Pascal's dialogue with Pascal's dialogue?
Just near things.
I don't think... Oh, he did get a dash. Interesting. I didn't think Winsuper got the dash refresh there.
Peace treaty?
And here it looks like MT is going to... Yes, he is going to void out the mooks room here. Typically, there's an amount of those mooks that we need to kill in order to unlock the elevator. By voiding out, the game will despawn enough of the enemies that it will automatically open the elevator. At this point, it will unlock the elevator immediately, but it will cost you the EXP you would have gained from killing those mobs. So it's not too big of a deal. The damage increase from 19 to 20 is less than 5%.
Although it could potentially make the difference in terms of his actual damage output, but what he's going to be trying to do here is clip out of a room known as the 9S room, That's going to reset the status of the elevator, so that way you can interact with it and enter the elevator and send him back up to the room he just came from. That room is conveniently high above the deep factory area, so what MT is able to do is clip out on one of these pipes and jump down to a specific location in the map to pick up a required trigger that he needs in order to complete the deep factory area. He's going to precisely jump at the... Ooh.
All right.
Ooh.
That's going to be a little bit of a time loss there from MT as he went back in bounds, jumping a little bit too late. Ideally, he would have voided back up to the room high above the deep factory area and finished the deep factory zone very, very quickly there. MT opting to skip Crushers too.
Yep.
He doesn't want any part
safe.
of that.
Yep, those Crushers do one-shot you regardless of your HP and level. If you get smushed by it, you are dead. And at this point, with no safety saves, a death in the factory would put you all the way back. I'm trying to remember where. At Flooded City, I believe?
No, not necessarily there. It would put him back just before 9S room, or in 9S room, unable to do deep factory skip.
Oh, wait, yeah, you're right. You're right. I can't remember. It's been so long since I've had to go that route.
But Winsuper also clipping out of Mook's room there, making his fight very consistent there, but MT did lose a good amount of time that Winsuper can possibly make up for in his deep factory here. We'll see if Winsuper has a clean deep factory. I'm crossing my fingers, man.
Yeah, that could really close the gap here. He's got about, he could save about 45 seconds on the deep factory skip.
Had a little bit of trouble getting up onto the pipe there, but still, first try clip, very nice. MT is going to be hanging out at the Soshi boss fight here, but Winsuper is hot on his heels here. Let's take a look and see if Winsuper can close the gap even more going into the final sections of the run. This is pretty
actually
dang close.
Could, yeah, this could be really close. The boss rush is coming up here. Well, MT is at the beginning of the boss rush in my eyes.
Winsuper got the void out, back up to the deep factory.
Yep.
Area. He's going to be closing the gap even more here going into the final sections. That was pretty scary.
Yep. You can soft lock there. If you get stuck behind that wall to reload your game. And since we have not made any hard physical saves, that would be the end of the run, as we would not be able to reload except for all the way back in Pascal's village before the death door.
Fortunately for Winsuper, he's definitely closed the gap here, just basically right outside the Soshi boss fight here. MT has to be sweating in his shorts here. I still think this can go either way.
I still think it can. It'll be interesting, especially because I'm not sure if MT has put in the practice for the newer Eve strats or not. So it'll be interesting to see. There are some pretty big time saves, and I know Winsuper's up to date on all that.
Has Winsuper actually done some of the self-destruct strategies?
Yes, he has on Eve. He hasn't done it really anywhere else, but then again, you know, a lot of them are for like E ending, so.
True. But we'll see if Winsuper decides to pull them out and save that last little bit of time in these fights here. He does need to save a good couple minutes or so to go over MT.
Wow, that was
certainly something. I had no idea such a vast space existed beneath the abandoned factory. I need to return and investigate as soon as possible. When I do, perhaps you'd be willing to join me?
No thanks.
I believe that's a second attack from Soshi out of Winsuper
I'm
there,
heading back to the
going
resistance camp.
into the final
What about you?
phase
Oh, I'll probably
of
wander back to
Soshi,
the
but
village.
still very
I have
nice.
plenty
He
on my
didn't
plate
actually
there.
break a leg,
see.
which is primarily what he was looking to do, is not break a leg.
This is the resistance.
Although
Say
Winsuper
again?
might have to break a
not
leg in
receiving.
order to
Scanning for interference.
close the gap here,
Requesting
but
backup. Forces in range.
I don't know. I mean, well,
potentially.
Winsuper has crits, so I
He
don't
has-
feel like it's a good idea for him to break a leg. I kind of think it's the other way around.
Why are their numbers increasing like this?
If MT breaks a leg, I think he's
Try
gonna
contacting
be
the
better
bunker via
off,
laser relay system.
since he does not have any criticals.
True that. Although we'll have to see if this is going to have to come down to the individual fights between all of these sections. MT must be having a little bit of butt clench there. Oh no. Winsuper losing a good amount of time
Oh,
warping into the lava. That's going to set him back a couple seconds, but definitely not what he was looking for. Going and navigating that out of bounds is a little bit different than what it is in Prologue, but it still traverses the same area here. MT is going to decimate these bipeds and stubbies in the back of the resistance camp, but he does need to be careful on his spacing. If he goes too far forwards, then some of the stubbies that will be respawning will actually be behind him. It looks like MT damaged those enemies enough so that way he didn't have to deal with any enemies behind him, which was good.
yeah.
Having all those enemies grouped up all in one location is what he was looking for. This is gonna have to come down to Bokushi here.
Okushi and Eve. These are the two fights that could decide it. Oh no, I don't know about this attack.
Oh no, this is a safer attack. If Bokushi was doing a different attack there... Oh, MT breaking a leg. Oh no, what is Winsuper?
Local machine life forms.
Oh, it looks like he's
This is
throwing the towel.
Hypothesis. The Goliath-class enemy screen has summoned the local machine life forms.
Oof.
Proposal.
I don't know if it's what exactly the issues were, but I know he was saying he had controller disconnects and all kinds of stuff. So
Oof.
2B, you okay?
That
I'm fine.
is
Take this bastard
unfortunate
down.
Right.
from Winsuper, but we'll see MT here make short work of Core 1 here.
I'm 25. I'm trying to see.
Coming.
It's
I
about
believe
There's
this.
too many.
I believe MT's run has a chance to sub 130.
And
it
I
looks
know he
like-
has a sub 130. He has one, but I don't remember what the time was because he never
It might have-
submitted it.
He never submitted it, but it might be 129.50 something, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think this actually has a chance to PB here for MT.
If he's able to take care of Core 2 very quickly here, he'd definitely still have a chance to
They're here too.
sub 130. The final section with Eve does take a little bit longer than he might think, but if he's clean on his combat, he can definitely clear
Let's take these guys out
the
first.
gap pretty good there. A little bit of frame drops going into Core 2, but that should be okay. It sounded like Core 2 was taunted a little bit late for the 0 cycle, but that's fine. What he's going to be looking to do is take care of the 4.
Is that?
But, wow, that positioning.
I was looking at him. That was falling in the pit.
Oh my god!
He's fishing!
Oh my
no!
The machines on the network all went berserk at the same moment.
Oh
I think
no!
the unit presiding over them may have gone
NT
mad.
choosing to fish! It's the wrong opportunity, not what he was looking for.
Stop the rest.
Most likely, yes.
Oh
I gave you the
no!
local
Oh
Eve's
no!
correct position.
That cost him a good amount of time there.
We'll
If
take
he can
care of
kill
You
Eve
just worry
in
about keeping the
3
village
minutes
safe, okay?
here,
Do be careful.
he might still be able to sub 130, but it's gonna be an uphill battle.
He is still ahead. His timer is not turned red, so he is still ahead.
That is incredible. I've never seen that
And
happen.
anywhere when you're on the water like that, if you hold circle, you start fishing. Which, ironically, is the same button we're trying to press to cancel a dialogue there. So, just happened to fish.
Wow, that was a lucky save from MT there. He was on low HP and Eve was about to swing at him.
What is it?
You know,
The energy seems to be coming from a large
And it looks like
number of
MT's
liquid
not
machine
going to
platforms.
skip
He's absorbing
phase
the
2
life
here
force of
as
whatever's
Eve is
left on the
regenerating his health, but that's a wise move because it could potentially make up that time on his combat for Eve in phase 3 and phase 4.
On it.
I'm actually
Detecting
very
unit 9S
curious
will
to
impact the
see
system.
if he goes for the self-destruct. Oh no, he's got 9S being rude.
Oh no, that's gonna cost him a couple more seconds here. MT is losing his window to sub 130. Come on, dude. I believe in you.
He's
He
got...
has good combat for the rest of these sections here. I don't believe.
Yeah.
We might be encountering a couple issues here with Twitch, but if MT is good on his combat here, he should be able to take advantage of his lasers, skill salves that'll decrease the cooldown time for those laser attacks, and being able to take advantage of his melee attacks is something that he's going to be aiming to do, but
It looks like it's broke.
something is happening out of our control. I'm not sure what's going on. We'll potentially be right back with you guys in just a little bit here.
Oh, well, I see his time, and he is not...
I see his time, 1:30:33, and he is standing next to 9S. I'm not too certain how that last fight went, but... Oh my.
Oh my, is it indeed? Oh my. Yeah.
But unfortunately, MT not getting the sub 130 time, but still, overall, a very clean fight and strong to the finish run from MT. I'm not too certain.
Yeah, I don't think we can do an interview because I don't think we can even... I don't even think the stream is live. I didn't even look.
Nice.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, okay.
1:30:33 was actually the time. Okay.
That's okay. A little peculiar on that finish there, but overall, still good run from MT, and unfortunate what happened with Winsuper's end there, but still both good runs from both these guys tonight. Unfortunate that Win took the forfeit, but
Yep. And I'm not sure if MT wanted to come in or not. It seems like he probably see if he wants to pop in for a minute here.
Actually, we might not
Oh
have
yeah,
time.
yeah, we don't actually have. Oh,
Yeah,
I
we might
forgot
not
about
have
that.
time.
It's the same.
I think with that, we're going to transition directly into our next matchup here.
Yeah, we have Shabu Shabu versus. I'm not even sure how to pronounce his name to this date.
I believe it's Shang.
But
Or
Shang, yeah. So that should be fun. I forget who's on commentary, but I guess we're gonna turn it over to them. They should be starting momentarily.
But thank you again to Winsuper and MT for racing tonight. Thank you to Marbles for being here with me.
Yeah.
And exclamation point NA for tournament bracket. For those of you who are interested in following along with the rest of the tournament races that we have left. Only a couple more weeks left of this tournament, but some exciting matches to see in the coming weeks. Also, again, follow both of the runners in chat. We'll be moving on to our next race here momentarily. So with that, I think we'll say...
Yep, we will sign off for now.
Have a good night, everybody.
Later.